The fluorescent lights of JFK Airport blurred through Emma's exhausted tears as she clutched her phone, staring at her sister's desperate text. "Please, Emma, I can't lose this job. Just hold up the sign and drive him to the hotel. He'll never know the difference." Emma Chen had always been the responsible one. The sister who worked double shifts at the diner to help pay for Rachel's college tuition. The daughter who never complained when their mother fell ill and the medical bills piled up like unpaid promises. The friend who showed up at 3 in the morning when someone needed her, no questions asked, but standing in the arrivals terminal at midnight, holding a hastily scribbled cardboard sign that read, "Mr. Westbrook." Emma wondered if this time her selflessness had finally gone too far. Rachel was supposed to be here. Rachel, with her sleek suit and confident smile, working her dream job as a junior executive assistant at Westbrook Industries. Rachel, who had called an hour ago, sobbing that she'd been in a fender bender across town and couldn't make it to pick up her boss's most important client. Or was it her boss? Emma hadn't even gotten the story straight before Rachel hung up, begging her to save her career. "Just this once," Rachel had pleaded. "You're my last hope." So here Emma stood, her waitress uniform hidden beneath an oversized cardigan, flour still dusting the cuffs of her jeans from the morning shift at her second job at the bakery. Her reflection in the terminal window showed a woman who looked nothing like someone who should be picking up a billionaire. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her black hair, usually tied in a practical ponytail, hung limply around her shoulders. She looked exactly like what she was, someone running on 4 hours of sleep and sheer determination. The crowd surged as international flight arrivals flashed on the screen. Emma lifted her sign higher, her hands trembling slightly. She had no idea what Mr. Westbrook looked like. Rachel had been too panicked to send a photo. Tall, dark suit, probably on his phone. That described half the men walking through those doors. Then she saw him. He moved through the crowd like a ship cutting through water, and everyone seemed to instinctively part for him. Tall, yes, but that word didn't capture the commanding presence he carried. His suit probably cost more than Emma's annual rent. Dark hair, silver at the temples, gave him a distinguished look that placed him somewhere in his early 40s. His jaw was set in a hard line, and his eyes scanned the terminal with the focused intensity of someone who didn't have time for delays or incompetence. Their eyes met. Emma's breath caught. She lifted the sign a fraction higher. He strode toward her with purposeful steps, and Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. This was a terrible idea. This man would take one look at her and know she didn't belong in his world of corporate towers and private jets. "Mr. Westbrook?" she managed, her voice barely audible over the airport chaos. Something flickered across his face. Surprise. Maybe confusion, but it vanished so quickly, Emma thought she'd imagined it. He studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Emma felt like a specimen under a microscope, and she fought the urge to fidget with her cardigan. "You're not who I expected," he said finally. His voice was deep, controlled, with an edge that suggested he was a man used to getting answers. Emma's mind raced. "Play it cool. Don't blow this for Rachel. I apologize if there was a miscommunication, sir. I'm here to drive you to your hotel. May I help you with your luggage?" He had only a carry-on, which he held himself. "I can manage." Another pause, another assessing look. Then, to her immense relief, he nodded. "Lead the way." The walk to Rachel's car felt like miles. Emma was acutely aware of him beside her, matching her pace but maintaining a careful distance. She wondered what he was thinking. This man who probably had people anticipating his every need. Could he tell she was a fraud? That she'd never driven anyone more important than Mrs. Peterson? From the retirement home to her doctor's appointments? Rachel's Honda Civic sat in short-term parking, looking painfully ordinary. Emma unlocked it, cringing at the coffee stain on the passenger seat. "Sorry about the mess," she muttered, quickly brushing old receipts off the dashboard. "It's fine." He folded his tall frame into the passenger seat without complaint, which surprised her. Somehow she'd expected billionaires to be more demanding. Emma started the engine and pulled out of the parking garage, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The GPS showed a 40-minute drive to the hotel in Manhattan. 40 minutes of trying not to reveal she had no idea who this man really was or why he was so important. They drove in silence for 10 minutes, the city lights beginning to give way to the glow of Manhattan in the distance. Emma kept stealing glances at him, noting how exhaustion lined his features despite his perfect posture. He stared out the window, lost in thought, his jaw still tight with tension. "Long flight?" Emma asked, immediately regretting the question. Too casual, too familiar. 15 hours, he replied without looking at her. "From Singapore." "That's brutal." The words slipped out before she could stop them. So much for maintaining professional distance. But then something unexpected happened. He turned to look at her, and the corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Brutal is an accurate description. The ice hadn't broken exactly, but it had cracked. Emma felt her shoulders relax a fraction. "There's water in the cup holder if you're thirsty." "Sorry, it's not fancy or anything." "Water is water." He reached for the bottle, and their fingers brushed accidentally. Emma jerked her hand back, heat flooding her cheeks. He didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he was too polite to mention it. They were crossing into Manhattan when everything went wrong. A car swerved into their lane without warning. Emma yanked the wheel, her waitress reflexes honed, from dodging customers and busboys in tight spaces, saving them from a collision. But the movement sent her purse flying, spilling its contents across the car floor. Her real ID, her diner uniform, a paycheck stub with her actual name, Emma Chen. Time seemed to freeze. Emma pulled over to the shoulder, her heart pounding for entirely different reasons now. Mr. Westbrook was staring at the scattered evidence of her deception, his expression hardening back into that impenetrable mask. "I can explain," Emma whispered, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Who are you?" His voice was cold now, all traces of warmth evaporated. "And where is Rachel?" The truth spilled out of Emma in a desperate rush. Rachel's accident, the panicked phone call, the terror of losing her job, Emma's inability to say no to her little sister. She told him everything, words tumbling over each other, knowing with each sentence that she was probably making everything worse. When she finished, silence filled the car like water, drowning her. Emma waited for the explosion, the fury, the threats of legal action. She waited for him to call the police or Rachel's supervisor or whoever billionaires called when normal people disappointed them. Instead, Alexander Westbrook did something Emma never expected. He laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a real, genuine laugh that transformed his entire face. The hard lines softened. His eyes crinkled at the corners. He suddenly looked years younger, almost boyish. "I'm sorry," Emma stammered, completely disoriented. "I'm not Westbrook," he said, still chuckling. "I'm Alexander Cross. I'm supposed to be meeting Westbrook tomorrow for a potential merger. We're competitors, actually. I saw you holding that sign, and I thought—" He shook his head, another laugh escaping. "I thought Westbrook was playing some kind of power move, sending a different assistant to throw me off balance before negotiations." Emma's brain struggled to process this information. "So you're not him?" "Not even close. And you're not Rachel. So we've both been pretending to be people we're not for the past half hour." He was grinning now, and Emma found herself fighting back her own nervous laughter. "This is the most honest I've been with anyone in months." The absurdity of the situation hit Emma all at once, and she started laughing too. Great, gasping laughs that might have been tinged with hysteria. Here they were, two complete strangers, who'd been play-acting their way through a bizarre case of mistaken identity, and somehow it was the funniest thing she'd experienced in years. When their laughter finally subsided, Alexander turned to her with genuine curiosity. "So Emma Chen, who works at a diner and a bakery and picks up imaginary billionaires for her sister. Why do you do it?" "Do what?" "Take care of everyone else." "From everything you just told me, you've spent your life putting other people first." No one had ever asked her that before. The question sat in the air between them, heavy with implications Emma wasn't ready to examine. "Because someone has to," she said finally. "And because I can." "How can I not help when I'm able to?" Something shifted in Alexander's expression. "Most people wouldn't see it that way. Most people would say you're being taken advantage of." "Maybe," Emma admitted. "But maybe that's okay too. Maybe being the person who shows up, who helps, who cares, maybe that's not weakness. Maybe it's the only thing that really matters." They sat in silence for a moment, the Manhattan skyline glittering before them like scattered diamonds. Then Alexander pulled out his phone. "We should call Rachel. Let her know you're both in the clear." "What about you?" Emma asked. "Don't you need to get to your hotel? And what about the real Mr. Westbrook? I'll catch a cab. As for Westbrook, he'll figure it out. And Emma?" He met her eyes, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "Thank you." "For what?" "I kidnapped you by accident. For reminding me what kindness looks like. For showing up when someone needed you, even when it was hard. For being exactly who you are." 3 months later, Emma was wiping down tables at the end of her shift when Rachel burst through the diner doors, waving her phone frantically. "Emma! You are not going to believe this." Emma sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Did you lock yourself out of your apartment again?" "Because I told you to give Mrs. Henderson a spare key." "It's not that. It's Alexander Cross." Emma's hand stilled on the table. She hadn't heard that name since their bizarre encounter, though she'd thought about him more often than she cared to admit. "What about him?" "His company just announced a new program, funding scholarships for students, from working families, full ride, including living expenses." And Emma, Rachel's voice cracked with emotion. "He asked for applications to be submitted through Westbrook Industries. He specifically requested that I oversee the program. He said he wanted someone who understood the value of selfless service." Emma felt her eyes burning. "Rachel, there's more." Rachel thrust her phone forward, showing an email. "He wants to meet with you." He said something about discussing a position at his foundation. "Emma, he created a whole charitable foundation, focused on helping people like us, people who help others." The diner door chimed again, and Emma looked up, expecting another customer. Instead, Alexander Cross stood in the doorway, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt, looking nothing like the exhausted businessman from the airport and everything, like someone who'd found his way home. "I figured I owed you a proper introduction," he said, his eyes finding hers across the diner. Alexander Cross, former workaholic, current believer in the power of showing up. "And you're Emma Chen, the woman who taught me that the most important business I could ever be in is the business of being human." Emma's co-workers had stopped pretending not to stare. Rachel was crying openly. And Emma, for the first time in her life, was completely speechless. Alexander crossed the diner, stopping in front of her table. "I've been looking for someone to run my foundation. Someone who understands what it means to give without expecting anything in return. Someone who picks up strangers at airports and sees the best in people, even when she's running on 4 hours of sleep and flour-dusted dreams." He smiled, and it transformed his face just like it had that night. "The pay is better than the diner. The hours are flexible, and the mission is simple. We help people who help others." "What do you say?" Emma looked at Rachel's tear-streaked face, at her co-workers who'd covered her shifts 100 times, at this impossible man who'd seen past her exhaustion to something worth believing in. She thought about all the times she'd said yes when she was tired, showed up when it was hard, chosen kindness when it cost her, and she thought about how sometimes the universe picks you up when you've spent your whole life picking everyone else up. "I say yes," Emma whispered. "I say thank you, and I say I'm glad I picked you up by mistake." Alexander's smile widened. "Best mistake either of us ever made." Outside the diner window, New York City sparkled with promise. Inside, surrounded by the people who'd always known her worth, Emma Chen finally felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Not because she'd stopped being selfless, but because she'd finally found someone who valued that selflessness as the strength it had always been. Sometimes the best journeys begin with wrong turns. Sometimes the right person shows up when you're pretending to be someone else. And sometimes, when you spend your whole life being there for others, the universe sends someone to be there for you. All it takes is one act of kindness, one moment of showing up, one decision to help even when you're not sure you can. Because that's when magic happens. That's when billionaires become real people, and tired waitresses become heroes, and mistaken identities become the beginning of something extraordinary. That's when you realize that the power to change lives, yours and others, has been in your hands all along.